Well, multiple leading officials are now warning of a midsummer nightmare that's about to strike the United States of America. In fact, they are warning of a simultaneous crisis between gas, oil, and electricity, which very well could mean that shortages and blackouts are headed in your direction. In fact, the warnings are so profound that it's coming from multiple agencies. Take a look at this first one here on oilprice.com. The IEA current energy crisis is much bigger than the 1970s oil crunch. Now, the article goes on to state this: the world faces a much bigger energy crisis than the one in the 1970s. The executive director of the International Energy Agency, Faith Barral, told German Daily Der Spiegel in an interview published on Tuesday, quote, "Back then, it was just about oil." Barral told the news outlet, "Now we have an oil crisis, a gas crisis, and electricity crisis simultaneously," said the head of the international agency created after the 1970 shock of the Arab oil embargo. It goes on, "The world, especially Europe, could face a summer of shortages of gasoline, fuel, and jet fuel," the IEA told Der Spiegel. In other words, we haven't seen anything as of yet and expect gasoline, fuel, oil, and electricity shortages in the very near future. But he's not the only one warning of that potential. Take a look at something that I actually discussed on restrictedrepublic.com not that long ago. But here's another warning from the NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. Now, I'm going to go directly to their entire full announcement so you can see it for yourself. But it starts with this, an announcement: extreme weather heightens reliability risk this summer. Now, the article dives into that, but it also dives into another reason this is happening. But here it is, May 18th, 2022, and it reads, NERC's 2022 Summer Reliability Assessment warns that several parts of North America are at elevated or high risk of energy shortfalls this summer due to predicted above normal temperatures and drought conditions over the western half of the U.S. and Canada. These above average seasonal temperatures contribute to high peak demands as well as potential increases in forced outages for generation and some bulk power system equipment. Now, it goes on to state this: Mid-Continent ISO, which they call MISO, is in the high risk category, facing capacity shortfalls in its north and central areas during both normal and extreme conditions due to generator retirements and increased demand. Additionally, at the start of the summer, MISO will be without a key transmission line connecting its northern and southern areas as restoration continues on a 4-mile section of 500 kV transmission line that was damaged by a tornado in December 2021. So what they are saying here, specifically the NERC is saying that we are going to have shortages in electricity due to normal weather patterns and increased weather patterns, depending on what those are. And on top of that, if you live in that mid-continent ISO area where they provide that power to you, then you are more than likely during normal conditions, not just summer conditions or weather conditions, but due to normal conditions, you are going to experience outages because they are short on generator power. They don't have the capacity anymore. And here's that area. If you're wondering what that mid-continent section provides, here's the 2015 MISO map. And here's that area. You can see it includes Michigan, portions of Texas, Louisiana, and that entire section there. But what on earth is going on specifically for the NERC to warn that generator issues could happen in that area? Well, let me show you some of what's been going on. For starters, they have been closing power plants ever since 2015. Take a look at what I'm talking about here. And here we have Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant closes after 42 years. And this was in 2015. Now, the Vermont Yankee is a 604 megawatt nuclear power plant that provided 42 years of reliable electricity in that area, and they completely shut it down. But not just there in Vermont, also New York shut down a power plant. And here we have Indian Point is closing. But Clean energy, which isn't as reliable, by the way, is here to stay. New York will mark a milestone in the state's evolving energy landscape when an Indian Point nuclear power plant permanently closed that week. So now that is closed. And now, on top of all of that, New York has one closing, Vermont has one closing, New England area. And now we also have another power plant being shut down in Michigan. Take a look here. This is on thehill.com. Another nuclear plant closes. Get ready for electricity shortages. And this was just on the 5th, May 29th, 2022. And here's what it states in the article. And it says this: America's electric grid is being mismanaged and consumers will pay a heavy price for that mismanagement. And by the way, this mismanagement is in the middle of an oil crisis, a gas crisis, and our current energy crisis, a pandemic. And Democrats policies, their Green New Deal crap is making it worse. But I go on. More evidence of that came with the recent closure of the Palisades power plant in Michigan. The 811 megawatt nuclear plant was shut down the same day that the North American Reliability Corporation, the NREC, issued a report saying that the U.S. electrical grid doesn't have enough generation capacity and that blackouts are almost certain to occur across the country this summer. This is that report that I showed you here from the NERC, and they're saying that at the same time they closed this power plant is the same time that their warning came out. It goes on. In particular, the NERC noted that the Midwest is facing a capacity shortfall that could lead to high risk of energy emergencies during peak summer conditions. Palisade was located in the heart of the Midwest, immediately adjacent to the area served by the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. And here's that area that they operate there yet again. It goes on. The region of the NRC identified as being particularly short on juice. So there you have it. We have an entire region where the NERC is warning of shortages. The Hill is telling us exactly what I just showed you, that these shortages are partly due because of all the power plants that they are shutting down. And mark my words, these power plants, the power plant that just got shut down there in Michigan, is going to cause some major problems. And here's the problems that I'm talking about. I found a good article on the Federalist. Right. So let's go on over to that Federalist report I talked to you about. But here it is, thefederalist.com. And I think this really gives a good idea of what is happening to our electric grid. Why are all these problems suddenly spouting up? And it says, deadly summer blackouts inevitable as renewables struggle to replace reliable energy. And it headlined with this: this is all a man-made energy crisis on the part of leaders who worship at the altar of the green agenda while plunging our country into the dark ages. Absolutely 100% spot on statement. The reason that we are having this crisis, the reason that things are going on is because they're shutting down our gas pipelines. They're shutting down our oil. They're shutting down places that you can drill and get oil, natural gas, all of that. And they're shutting down our nuclear plants. This is all happening right now. Now, that article goes on to explain a little bit more about what's going on with these renewables. And take a look here, and that's that same article. Solar panels will be unable to generate power from the sun once clouded out by smoke from wildfires, seemingly worse every year as a consequence of the negligent land management, specifically in California, where they are refusing to clear out areas so, the fire doesn't jump forest to forest, if you will. But Mora told BNN Bloomberg the early retirement of fossil fuel plants shares much of the blame for this year's vulnerabilities in the nation's energy infrastructure. She goes on to say this: the pace of our grid transformation is out of sync, she told the paper, as Joe Biden rushes to promote unreliable renewables at the place of reliable, low cost, and natural gas. At the same time, the Biden administration is shutting down domestic energy projects in the form of fossil fuels as gas prices continue to reach new record daily. She goes on, the communication director for the energy nonprofit Power the Future blamed the coming blackouts on the failed green agenda, and they highlighted New Mexico as a prime example. example, what happened in New Mexico, right? Why is New Mexico a failed green agenda? Well, let's go back to the year 2019 to find out what happened there. And here we are. New Mexico passes a mini Green New Deal. Again, this was March 22nd, 2019. What did this new Green Deal offer the state? Well, here it is. New Mexico's governor has signed a bill that required the state's utilities to be completely carbon free by 2045, and the legislation includes money to close a coal-fired plant and retain workers who lose their jobs. In other words, you're going to close the coal plants, you're going to close down reliable sources, and try to get more carbon-free by 2045. More solar, more wind, these kinds of things. And what did that do to the state? We'll take a look at some of the things that happened as a result. New Mexico faces summer blackouts. Summer blackouts. Here's more on usnews.com. New Mexico regulators looking to mitigate the rolling blackouts now that have been happening. And of course, PNM warns of potential blackouts in New Mexico this summer. Case in point, this is a man-made energy crisis, in part of the leaders who worship at the altar of the new Green Deal. They are giving us unreliable sources of energy. You can't just sit there and blow on a windmill to make it work. Us conservatives and libertarians and Republicans know that. There's a lot of liberals who just don't think. Right? And solar powers, they don't work so well when there's not the sun out. Maybe we should get more reliable sources or look into other things that we can do before jumping the gun so we don't all have blackouts and rolling blackouts all the time, like California and New Mexico and other areas that are now at risk. And what does Biden do? He keeps closing everything down, stopping drilling, closing pipelines, closing nuclear plants. This is who we have leading the country, if you want to even call it that. Anyhow, wanted to give you the warnings that were being put out even by the IEA and some of our leaders in that industry. And I think you just need to be aware of them. With that, please don't forget to check out my partner at noblegoldinvestments.com. If you have not converted your 401k, please do that. Now is the time to do that. Get a gold, a silver-backed IRA, and you can do all of that with noblegoldinvestments.com. And on top of that, if you don't have a 401k, they also have that option. And right now they are giving away this 3-ounce silver coin you see here. This thing is thick and it's really cool. This is one of my favorites, but they're giving it away with any approved IRA. So give them a call at 1-877-646-5347 and let them know you heard it on Lisa Haven. And they give you no hassle there as well. Anyhow, thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.